I never seen another girl where they make me feel the way that you make me do.
We will start our today's presentation with the Villgro Group, Villgro Africa. This is a group that is also behind the Innovators Forum. They will tell us what they do and how they come in to progress innovation, which is quite relevant as we talk about industrialization. Other than the people you see here, there are others linked through social media. And therefore, they will be able to follow our discussions. So I invite your CEO, Dr. Jagi, who after your remarks, will then move on to Dr. Robert Karanja, who will give us the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I can't hear you. Good morning. If you're seated next to your neighbor, ask them, are you an African? If they say yes, tell them this is your day. Because we're talking about Africa Industrialization Week. And there couldn't be any better time like now, after what we've gone through, especially with COVID and the disruptions we saw. And to me, actually, the most painful moment was to have to wait. You remember when they said that we will need thousands of ventilators, and I remember my colleagues, Dr. Robert and other colleagues, including Dr. Chelule and Dr. June here, we started scratching our heads and asking, what can we do as inventors, as innovators, to avail ventilators to our patients? Because it looked like globally there was more demand than the supply, and we had to be at the end of the waiting line for those devices to get here. Then we also took another step at PPEs, the masks, the sanitizers, and all these things that we'd never made locally, yeah. And that in itself was a proof that nikukata huwa tunakata, right? We could do these things, only that maybe we've refused, and we needed something like COVID to show us. As I was looking at the trade balances of the country, when you look at net imports and net exports, year on year it's been around 8 billion, and it's been going up and up mostly. But last year, for the first time, it went down by about 4%. And I started asking myself, what could have been the attribution to that? And it came to two things. One, first of all, the disruptions of global supply chain, which meant that we couldn't import as much. But the second thing was the fact that we started making our own things, right? Even a humble mask, a small PPE, sanitizer, all those things helped reduce that trade balance that we've had as a country. They say that Africa today is the China of 20 years ago. Yeah? Exactly the year 2001, the GDP of China was $1.3 trillion. Africa today is double that. We are actually at $2.6 trillion. You can see how much progress they've been able to make with just 20 short years. I don't know where you are on the night of that 1st December, the year 99, as we were turning the new millennium. Yeah? Those here are old enough, like myself. Remember, as we were doing the countdown to whether the world will end or not, the Y2K and all, and at the same time, China was thinking, how do we join World Trade Organization? It's the first time they joined WTO in 2000. And they were thinking, how do we grow, how do we improve our trade balances? And if you look at the growth curve of China GDP from the year 2001, you notice a few interesting trends. They stopped exporting raw materials in the raw form. and they started focusing more on, actually they started with very low hanging fruits. They started with fast consumer goods and components. Forget making complete machines and equipments, but just making components. And I was very happy when I saw the NMC stand, the numerical computing stand, and see the components they're making, car parts, gears, and all these things. That's where China started. How do you make components that then other manufacturers can buy and add to their final product? And they grew year on year on those two things, FMCG and components, up to today, where they are now contending for the top position globally in terms of GDP, right? Actually, if you look at when you look at it as by parity, spending power or purchasing power parity, they are the largest today. So if China could do it in 20 years, yeah, can't we do it even in a shorter time? Now that we have technology on our side, we have the fourth industrial revolution just happening, which is tech-driven. I know in the neighboring county we have the semiconductor chip production that was launched by the president, and you can start seeing what else can we build on top of that. Can we now go and make integrated circuits? Can we make motherboards, microcontrollers? And these components, as they get purchased by these electronic manufacturers, all of a sudden our trade balance will start improving. It's my colleague Robert here who reminds me, every time we are driving in the city and we see these big roads, infrastructure coming up, and I remember he keeps saying, we are setting ourselves up as a supermarket for people to import and bring products for us to purchase, right? It's like we are opening up everything, yet what are we sending out? Yeah? For us to get the infrastructure dividend, it will only start by those small value additions to the raw materials that we have, and then we start sending out even semi-processed as opposed to just raw materials, and you'll see how that can tip the scales in our favor and improve the economy, create jobs, create impact. I was looking at our top 5 exports in addition to tea, coffee, and others, and I saw that titanium ore is among the top 4 or 5. And I want to ask the biomedical engineers here, Dr. Chelule and others, how hard or how easy is it to make from titanium, or how hard is it to actually make a titanium plate, yeah, which we keep importing as I now go to the biomedical space. We import this when you need a hip replacement, jaw replacement. It can't be that hard, right? It's basically a plate. And later on we'll ask Dr. Chelule that question, how hard can it be? Then we go to the next level. What else can we make? As Villgro, we've embarked on this important journey by looking at biomedical devices that can be made locally. We've invested just a small amount, about $1.2 million in the medical innovation space, and that has unlocked 18 more $1 million in follow-on funding. Most of it is foreign direct investment, and some of it is also local investment. So you can see the multiplication power there, 18x. So if we join with the others here, the Kenya Industrial Estates and any other person here who is doing invention, innovation, and we channel this towards some key areas, you can see the multiplier effect, that very soon it will start, there is a ripple effect that goes beyond just the funding raised, but the jobs created, even the economy around those manufacturing centers. In the panel, you'll be hearing what we've done and how that has worked for us. I remember when I go back to Commerce 101, the one we did in high school, and they told us there are 4 factors of production. Remember them. Let's see who was awake on that afternoon. They are labor, land, capital, and entrepreneurship. Yeah. So entrepreneurship is the one that makes all these other three come together. Yeah. Land, we have plenty. In fact, we have so much of it that the best we are able to do nowadays is subdivide it and sell, right? We've not really put it so much into productive use. We have entrepreneurship in plenty. My colleague and I, Joel, driving here this morning, our driver kept sharing amazing ideas. You couldn't believe how you can reduce the cost of internet in this country to almost 0 shillings. He talked about many other inventions he did when he was in high school, and I was like, wow, we have abundance of entrepreneurship. Capital. Villgro is one of the providers here that are looking at capital, but capital is increasingly not becoming an issue as it was a few years ago. So if you have capital, you have entrepreneurship, we have plenty of land. What else are we waiting for? Yeah. In terms of labor, I'm told that Kenya is among top 3 in Africa in terms of Human Development Index. So we are located at the hotspot of the best talent. Yeah. So we can really do this thing, starting with the humble things like the car you can see there, going to components, going to PPEs, and slowly over time. We want 20 years ago, when your child asks you, yeah, what did you do or what didn't you do 20 years back, that is that things have changed or have stayed the same, you should be able to look at them bravely in the eye and say that you contributed. Because we also have what we call demographic dividend, which you only get it once. You only have one chance for a country to get rich before the population gets old, right? Right now we are at a median age of 19 years, 20 years. Over time, that will keep changing, and like we've seen with Japan and others, the more you get older population, by then your economy needs to have grown enough to support all the burdens that come from an aging population, including reduced purchasing power, including sickness, double disease burden, all these things. But if you don't start planning now, 20 more years is just around the corner, right? You open your eyes, an election term is over, 5 years are gone. You open your eyes again, 10 years are gone. In a few more years, 20 years is gone. So let's look at what we can do. Let's start putting those measures in place now. And as Villgro, we are happy to support in that journey, especially in as far as healthcare and medical devices are involved. So my last call would be, if anyone here is an innovator with a healthcare idea, healthcare innovation, please let's meet outside the tent before the day is over. Yeah, tukutane nyuma ya tent, and we'll be more than happy to journey with you. We put our hearts to this thing. Yeah, and for us, what drives us more is impact. We want our people, our Kenyan people, to have better life in the days that are coming. With those few remarks, I would like to thank you all for attending this day, and I look forward to networking and meeting all of you in the course of the day. Asante sana.
So my name is Robert Karanja. I am the Chief Innovation Officer and co-founder at Villgro Africa. I will tell you a little bit about why we talk about investing in biomedical devices and diagnostics, innovation and manufacturing in Kenya. You've heard us talk about Innovators Forum a few times, so maybe I could start there by answering the question, what is Innovators Forum? So Innovators Forum is a networking platform, and what we're doing is we're bringing together innovation actors in the medical devices and diagnostics sector. The innovation actors are drawn from government, academia, private sector, and that's what we call the Triple Helix, in order to co-create an innovative industrial cluster of med devices and diagnostics. The Innovators Forum is actually spearheaded both by the ministry, Director Kirima, and Villgro Africa. in order to convene and to convene these disparate actors. It's very rare that you'll actually find, and it's actually even happening right here. You don't see much of academia, for example. You don't see much of private sector. I see predominantly government. So, and why is that? It's because we simply talk different languages. So when I'm with government, the language speaks to policy. When I'm with private sector, it's about making money. When I'm with academia, it's about creating new knowledge. But the world as we know it it's no longer about who can mine gold or diamond in their country, and so that makes them wealthy. In fact, what we've seen in Africa, the more minerals you have, the poorer you are. And I'm one of those believers who think, I really thank God we don't have any major minerals that we've been extracting, because it would have attracted a lot of civil wars and issues to us if we don't know how to organize ourselves in order to actually make it work for us. So Innovators Forum is basically helping us to do that by bringing together those very important voices: policy, how do you create wealth, how do you create knowledge? Because today's global economy is a knowledge-driven economy. And what we need to be able to transform our economy is to be able to understand how do we mine our brains. And I think the exhibition booths around us today bear me witness that there's a lot to mine. The question is, how do we now make money from it? So who are the Innovators Forum partners? As I said earlier, Ministry of Industrialization, led by Director Kirema, Villgro Africa, and you can see myself here, and Wilfred, and a big team. Joel also is here with us, still in Nairobi. CREED, the Consortium for Health Research and Development. This is also another network that brings together innovation actors and CSOs that are focusing on policy advocacy to increase the level of health R&D investment in this country. Gearbox, which is an amazing makerspace within Nairobi that provides a lot of prototyping, pilot manufacturing capability for engineers. So if you are an engineer and you also want to see another place that has amazing toys that we play to our heart's desire, Gearbox is a place to be. And we also don't forget the diaspora. So we also work with Kenyans out there, including leading scholars within the University of Washington Department of Global Health that are also interested and looking at how do we invest in order to build a vibrant, innovative, and manufacturing capability for med devices and diagnostics in Kenya. So over the last so many months, I think from June, we've actually been having a series of stakeholder events, as I said, bringing together this Triple Helix. All of them talking about how do we invest in this industry. And those are, what you see here is basically the Forum 1, 2, 3, 4. And today is actually our Forum 5, where we want to wrap up this consultative series so that we're able to have a consensus on how do we go about this. A little bit about who we are, because one thing I've learned in this world is you can only go far if you go with people. But there's a price. And what is the price? The price is trust. If you don't trust me and if I don't trust you, we can't do business together, isn't it? So sometimes it's good to also talk about who we are and why we're doing what we are. So Villgro Africa, we are a franchise of another entity known as Villgro, based in India. I think I can say it almost without contradiction, fear of contradiction. Villgro is probably the oldest social enterprise incubator in the world, with over 21 years of track record, working in developing countries, building startups that are knowledge intensive, highly innovative, and that speak to innovation. The name Villgro actually is, I'm from Mount Kenya, and we are always accused of not being super creative in the way we name our businesses. So I discovered it's not just a Kikuyu thing. Apparently when you go to India, it's the same. Villgro is village and growth. How do we transform our rural economies? So Villgro, you know, and sometimes we also say we'll grow. And sometimes when we are with our Indian friends, we tease them a bit and we say, you know, Indians, they can't say the word W, so it ended up, instead of will grow, it became Villgro. So we have two leading hypothesis as to how we ended up with the name, but it's actually about rural transformation through the power of innovation, through the power of entrepreneurship. And I talked of social entrepreneurship, and some people may ask, what is social entrepreneurship? Social entrepreneurship is really just how do you build a business, not just to make money, but you also are equally concerned about social impact. How do we move Africa, how do we move Kenya from donor aid dependency to transforming those challenges that the donor aid is coming to solve into commercial opportunities with local value chains that create jobs and create local wealth? That is the power of social enterprise. So over the last 6 years, my slides need updating. We've actually supported, because we've done a lot of work since COVID hit, about 40 companies to date. And these companies have gone on to be able to touch more than 2.3 million lives. They've generated more than 280 million Kenya shillings in terms of new revenues. And our small investment, as you've heard from Wilfred, of about 1.2 million, 120 million thousand, and 120 million Kenya shillings, isn't it? Has been able to actually give us a direct leverage of 1.8 billion Kenya shillings as FDI here in this economy. So mtupigie makofi jameni. That is not easy. What it actually takes is somebody like me who is a scientist. I was never trained in the commerce that Wilfred was talking about, to be able to re-engineer myself so that I'm not just a PhD that's at home with test tubes working in a lab, but to understand economics, to understand trade, to understand investment and entrepreneurship. And that's how you build a knowledge economy. So when I look at these amazing innovations here, and when I listened to the speeches from the governor, one of the things I picked up very quickly, this gentleman is an economist, isn't it? And it's economics that drive the world. And how do we now create that merger between the people who create knowledge, people who invent, because they are residing in the universities, in the labs, they're residing in the startup hubs, innovation hubs, like this one, the Laikipia Innovation and Enterprise Development Program, an amazing innovation hub, which as you heard earlier, 1,500 startups supported, creating 22,000 jobs in this very county. So the power of entrepreneurship, power of social enterprise is not something I need to belabor, but it's to say that this is real and this is happening. So we are anchoring a lot of the work we're talking about in Innovators Forum on the local content policy. So one way of summarizing what is local content, it's basically build Kenya, buy Kenya. Make in Kenya, buy and you. So if you invest in BJ50, what you've done is, as opposed to importing a tuk-tuk, what you've done is actually you've created jobs, you've created revenue. So we need to be able to believe in ourselves and to be able to do the right thing. But within the local content policy, there are three things that jumped out to me, which is what led to this partnership with the Ministry of Industrialization. One is promoting R&D. The second one is promoting enterprise development. And the third one is enabling a good business environment by being able to incentivize stakeholders and facilitating a collaborative environment. And so when I talk of Triple Helix, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. So academia, talking about science, engineering, technology. Private sector, talking about how do we commoditize all these things that we are creating. And government, number one, setting the agenda. We have the Big Four agenda, and also creating an enabling environment. And that way it allows us to co-create and build an industry, because together you can do what none of us can do alone. So the second question is, why are we talking about medical devices and diagnostics? Why not any other sector? If you're here, I know we're talking about how do we go steel, how do we go about, manufacturing for agriculture and for these other sectors. And they're awesome. I believe they also are deserving. I'll put a very quick case as to why we look at medical devices and diagnostics as also a priority sector. If you ask, what kind of research do we do in this country? What kind of research do we do in this continent? If you look, and one way of being able to determine that is to look at what do we publish. Academia, they live by a simple rule that says publish or perish. And so as we do our research, even if you went through undergraduate, you were told, do a dissertation, present this dissertation. What do we do with those dissertations? We publish them. Ideally, that's not where we need to stop. But the question is, what are we publishing? And you'll see on this graph, is it to the left? Yes, to the left. It basically shows that within a small decade, 2002 to about 2011, the amount of scientific papers that were published in Kenya, in East Africa, that actually doubled within 10 short years. And that trend has still been continuing. So the question then that I asked was, what were they publishing in? And this might be a bit small for you to see, but what you'll see is the top 5 areas of publication is immunology, followed by agricultural sciences, environmental ecology, plant animal science, microbiology, geosciences, social sciences. But the top 5 is actually, all of them are biological sciences and led by immunology. When you talk of immunology, what are we talking about? It's diagnostics. If you were to visit Kemri, they are not here today, but because they believe they're in a different ministry, but it's the same country. They have an amazing production facility for rapid diagnostic kits. One of the challenges we've had, even as we're dealing with COVID, is being limited in terms of how many COVID tests can we do in a day. And we typically only do about 5,000 to 7,000 because of lacking reagents, lacking capacity. But it's our number one area of research. And the question is, how do we now move beyond doing research to being industrialists? How do we transform some of the people in places like Cambridge and our universities? Then the second thing is you also look at what are the market dynamics. So in 2015, the medical devices industry market in Africa was about 1.4 billion. Within 2 years, it's projected to hit 7 billion. So very huge upward curve. And believe you me, we are actually importing all of these technologies. The sad thing is most of them don't work. Why? We learned this very painfully through something we call the managed equipment services. We asked all the top guys, GE, Philips, you name them, bring us your best equipment. We're going to equip 92 hospitals across the country and solve our health system issues once and for all. What happened? Those equipments were designed to work in a place that does not have dirty power, does not have the kind of dust we have in our environment. Some of them even to install, you needed to actually first start by changing the transformer that's providing power to that health facility. So that major project, it basically failed because we were trying to bring technologies that were not designed for our market to work in our market. So if we are having a market that's moving from 1.4 billion to 7 billion, and the West or the northern countries, they don't design for us, they design for themselves. Their products are failing us. That's a market that is just a low-hanging fruit. The second thing I wanted to point out is, Wilfred talked about the fourth industrial revolution. Where does this happen? If you look at our continent, we have 4 leading hubs of this startup ecosystem, fourth industrial revolution narrative. You see Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, and South Africa. This is a graph looking at what happened in 2019. Sometimes we talk of millions of dollars and people think we are dreamers. In 2019, $2.02 billion, not Kenya shillings, $1 billion came to Africa in the form of venture capital investment in startups. The big 4, those countries I mentioned, are the ones that take the lion's share of it. Kenya was number 2, doing almost 25% of that $2.02 billion. Today, as we speak, we're already over $3 billion that have come in the form of venture capital investment to this country. How do we connect that venture capital to this? How do we connect it to any industry sector that we want? And that to me has been a big challenge. When I look at even the vision that we have for Laikipia County, you'll face the same problem that we're facing when you talk of medical devices. Most of the money, the same period I showed you for the research academia, about 2002 to 2012, this is how the venture capital investment for East Africa was panning out. The highest peak, sorry, this is really important. The highest peak is actually for fintech, financial services, followed by energy. Where is agriculture? It's right here. Where is health? It's even worse. What are our competitive strengths? Do you know we actually have the largest national research institute on this continent for agriculture? And that was Kari, even before it became big as Calro. Have we solved our food security issues? No. Because we have understood how to do the science, but we've not understood how to convert the science into products and services. We haven't understood the business side of the science. Same thing is happening for us in health. And it's the same issues that we keep talking about. We need a triple helix approach to address it. So we asked ourselves, what are the key barriers for adopting biotech innovation? To me, it's not too many issues. The first one is that there's a lack of a strong sector-focused innovation system. The National Innovation System for Kenya, by default, is an ICT innovation system. So when you see fintech doing so well, that's by design, not by default. And we're always told it's either you plan. How does it say it go? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, isn't it? So if we want to succeed, we need to be able to plan. Otherwise, by not planning, we are actually already planning to fail. So how do we increase academia, private sector linkages? How do we ensure that there's enough capital for pre-seed and seed funding? When I talk of the $2 billion, $3 billion, none of it is coming primarily for seed or pre-seed. It's coming in for when you're raising a Series A and beyond. But for pre-seed and seed, how do we solve that problem? It requires government policy. It requires government action. Information asymmetry. If scientists, engineers do not understand entrepreneurship, they don't understand economics, they are challenged. We cannot really live to the, we cannot be able to realize the vision that we see in front of us. We have restrictive policies in some cases that prevent academia from being able to create spin-off companies. And we also have a colonial heritage that is still part of us. We really believe in importing. Nobody came to Cambria and said, can you solve this problem for us? Nobody came to Laikipia County and said, this innovation hub and said, can you solve this problem for us? We are busy importing. Our private sector, when they see the challenges, rather than talking to the creators of knowledge, right next door to them, they'd rather go to China and Turkey and all of these other countries that we know about. How do we get the conversation to happen between us so that we can actually solve this? And for us, the Innovators Forum is providing a roadmap towards being able to move from a situation where we have amazing strengths, but actors that do not talk to each other and do not collaborate, into building an innovative industrial cluster. And it starts, and this is not something that we've invented. This is what the approach that has been taken in so many countries very effectively. It starts by being able to define an under-attended system. Medical devices, as I said, if you look at the market dynamics, very strong. You look at the need, very big, but not served. The second part is you need to be able to co-create an idealized design. The third part is you need to be able to identify gaps and opportunities within that under-attended system. And then the last one is to be able to engage, to act, and agree how do we come up with an ecosystem intervention. What do we need to measure? Because what gets measured is what gets done. And be able to iterate it until you're able to solve it. So how do we want to achieve this for medical devices and diagnostics? We want to be able to, number one, as I said, we've already been doing a lot of stakeholder engagements, seeding the ground, casting the vision, saying, can we believe in ourselves to do this? And the answer we've been getting is yes. The second part is to understand what do we want to do. In a sense, I summarize, I say we want to build an industrial cluster. And how do we do that? We want to build a consortium that can be able to achieve it. Because building a cluster is bigger than any one organization can do. And the third question is, how do we even finance this? We want to be able to build an industrial cluster by creating a biodesign program and acceleration program that brings together innovators from health, with health expertise, with engineering expertise, with tech expertise, tech entrepreneurial expertise, and enable them to identify the challenges we have in our health system, be able to enable them to validate which problems are actually worth solving, both from a technical feasibility angle, but also from a commercial feasibility. Then from there, they go through an inventive step, invent a solution, develop that solution, and build a startup business, a social enterprise around that solution, all within the space of 1 year. We believe we can be able to do 5 startups each year. And over 5 years, it can give us 25 startups. When you look at the progress that Villgro has made in the last 6 years, it has given us a few things that we've learned and we validated. If you give us 25 startups, we can guarantee almost that 25% of them will actually be part of the companies that draw down the $10 billion that's coming to venture, in terms of venture capital investment, coming to Africa by 2023. Which means being able to mobilize the resources that, the factors of production that Wilfred mentioned, land, labor, remind me, Wilfred, entrepreneurship and capital. So, because we are very privileged, if you're living in Kenya, this is really the prime real estate for venture capital investment. But through this program, we want to be able to provide the pre-seed, seed capital, and the technical support to make it happen. So that within 2022 to 2027, we're able to give birth to 25 startups that are going to be able to solve some of these challenges for us. We believe in results-based financing. Money is not easy to come by. So even for me as a scientist, I'm not an economist, but one of the things that I've come up to appreciate is that we do need to embrace a lot more innovative financial models than just credit, because credit is a bit limiting. We don't have collateral as startups. We have to cross a valley of death from when you're doing the invention all the way to the point you start generating revenue that cannot be serviced by debt. What do we need? We need capital that comes in terms of either equity or quasi-equity form. And we want to be able to provide, for the 25 startups, we know it would cost quite a bit of money, but not much, about $15 million that we can be able to finance through an impact bond. And what an impact bond does is very simple. Number one, it means we're able to de-risk industrialization for the first time ever. Till today, one of the reasons that some of these challenges, the projects are not moving, is because industrialization has been EPZs. And an EPZ, the way it works is very simple. I'll give you tax breaks for maybe 10 years, isn't it? And I'll promise you educated, we call them, so there's cheap labor. And what happens is that as we are rolling out the red carpet, most of the factories that are set up within the EPZs, number one, they're not creating jobs for scientists, engineers. They're creating jobs for low-skilled labor. And once the tax breaks are over, they honestly have nothing to keep them here. They move on to the next country that has set up a new EPZ. So it's usually a race to the bottom. The reason we're not able to industrialize is because we're not being able to mobilize capital that speaks to innovative form of industrialization. And an impact bond is able to mobilize for us the $15 million, and we don't ask the government to put in that money. We ask investors, actually private equity and venture capital, to provide that $15 million. And if we're successful in building our cluster, and this is something that you negotiate with the government as an outcome payer, if we're successful, then they're able to pay back the $15 million. If we're not, no worries. It does not cost the Kenyan taxpayer a single coin. Even if you made 99% of the agreed on target, if it's not 100%, taxpayer gets the benefits without putting in a single coin, because it's results-based financing. And we believe this is an approach that can not only work for medical devices, but can apply literally for any other sector. And by being able to put it together, it does require that proper alignment of government policy, entrepreneurship, and the academia, so that when you talk of building innovative firms from scratch, we're able to actually achieve that and prove to the world and prove to ourselves that we should not be struggling to say, where is the seed capital for BJ50? Njogu will not have collateral for that. And it's not his fault. We need to ask ourselves, what did we do at independence to create, we had this Africanization program. That's what led to, Centum. Yeah? We invested, we figured out we cannot have political power without having economic power. And the government moved to make it possible for Kenyans to actually have economic power. So this is not anything different. We don't need to even reinvent a lot of these things. Even the mechanisms for doing it, we still have them. So my belief is that within that 5 years, we can actually be able to generate the 25 startups. They are high risk, so we know not all of them will succeed. But with our track record at Villgro, we know we can be able to give you, it's a numbers game, at least 5 or 6 of them that will move on to raise $1 million and beyond in terms of being able to take the innovations to market. So immediate steps would really look like, how do we move forward following our stakeholder engagements, do feasibility validation studies with a few more key stakeholders, launch a roadmap, and that is what we are talking about here today. How do we go through phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and then get into the project design? Because being able to structure a bond is also quite in itself an enterprise. And with that, we're able to move forward so that we don't just talk, we actually implement. And we have a vision and a clear roadmap on how we can be able to deliver industrialization. Not through EPZs, not through doing generics, not through a race to the bottom, but through harnessing the brains of our academia, of our youth, and being able to speak to that demographic dividend that Wilfred had shared about. With those few slides, I can say I'm done. Thank you, Sana, Bwana Director. I know you introduced yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Why in Villgro? What drives you? What's your background?
Yeah, Wilfred is my name. Most people call me doctor, but I'm not doctor yet. I have an MBA in global business and sustainability, and my journey with innovation started about 10 years ago, where I was living and working in Middle East, and there was an opportunity to pitch or share innovation. It was in a country called Jordan, and they had this technology park, like the ones we are hearing about, and they were welcoming people to pitch, and I had an idea around traffic control, and they were surprised to see a Kenyan in the middle of nowhere coming to to give them a run for their money. So that idea didn't go very far, but again, I got very inspired when I saw what they were doing there. That time, to give a background, Yahoo had bought a company there. Those who are old, those who are old enough, you remember Yahoo was the main one before Gmail. Yes. So Yahoo had bought a startup there called Maktub. And basically Maktub was making it possible to use Arabic characters while typing on your email. And that gave a lot of momentum. We need to hear success stories, because that success story made now Amman, Jordan, the biggest startup ecosystem outside in the Middle East, outside Tel Aviv, outside Israel. So that's a brief background, and I'll share more during the Q&A.
Thank you. And Dr. please also introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Dr. June Madete. I am a medical engineer by profession. I'm a lecturer at Kenyatta University. I also coordinate a consortium of biomedical engineers in Africa. We have over 16 universities involved. So we really believe in the innovation education aspect. So the catalyst, yes, initially before, because lecturers, you know how we are broke. So the catalyst of how to have that biodesign thinking and to help the students learn. And we have different summer schools where we have 1 week where the students come. It started in 2012. And we have some products that have come from the summer school, both in Europe and in Africa. And we go through the process of medical device design and the idea that it's not just about your idea. You have to think about entrepreneurship. You have to think about how you're going to prototype. You have to think about how you're going to have a final design that will be able to be showcased and go to the market. And eventually, if patenting needs to be done, we have to think about that. So we have several platforms as a consortium, and we have a few products. Some are commercialized, well, not that many, because as you know, if you have a summer school, so because there's no exam, so you'll have Monday, they'll come. By Sunday, everyone says bye, and then let's meet next year. Then if you ask what happened, so that's when we partner with people like Villgro to help the process after that. And I think some of your products came from the summer schools that we've had in the past few years. So I'm glad to be here, and anyone has any question about especially education and all the summer schools we have, and how the steps of product development, especially when it comes to medical devices, and even something as simple as the car. Design thinking is not a matter of just, okay, I have the idea, let me make it. There's a whole ecosystem, as Robert had mentioned. Thank you for now.
Thank you. And I want to continue with you, because you hear me talking about academia a lot, and incidentally, Kenyatta University is the first university in this country to actually have a program for biomedical engineering at degree level. Please, can you, and this is one of the stalwarts behind it, can you mark off it tafadhali? Because you need to understand the capacity that we have is usually very much undersold. So we saw some young fellows being lauded at the UN not too long ago for being able to develop a ventilator. And a ventilator is it a class? What class is it in terms of a medical device?
It's very high risk.
Very
so
high risk.
Depending on what format we use, but it's very high risk.
Yes.
Because it's invasive, we have to think about that. And it's going to potentially save lives or not. So it's a very, very, very crucial high-risk device.
What was the time it took actually from when the idea was birthed that yes, we need to respond to COVID, to the point you actually had a device that was ready to go into regulatory?
So the first prototype took a month. They are quite bright, and again, we didn't have classes. So we did they did tests. They were negative for COVID, and we locked them in a room. We gave them food and all that, but they were willing to come. And another thing that was successful is because we took School of Medicine, School of Engineering, School of Pharmacy, School of Nursing. So it wasn't an independent thinking. So the whole design process covered all that. The first prototype was after 1 month, but when we went to the Kenya Bureau of Standards, there were things we had to change. Like there were components we did not, it cannot be a medical device.
Yes.
Hii ni kama TV, but it's more crucial. So we had to make sure we comply with that. So that took another 6 months to reiterate and have one that can go for testing from KEBS. They came and checked our quality management system, whereby all the documentations needed for that. That took a while. So after we had Kenya Bureau of Standards certification, and they normally check our electronics and our output, and is it doing what a ventilator needs to be doing. So once we got that, we need to apply for clinical trial, and that's research. And research is, you have to do a protocol, it has to be approved by ethical review committees, and it has to go to Poisons Board of Kenya because they regulate the clinical trials. And of course, you have to also find research passport from NACOSTI. So all that, I think KEBS, we got it May last year.
Okay.
We got Poisons Board October.
Wow. Please, my coffee. So when I was talking about you can move from ideation to product ready, that entire journey for you, it's been how many months?
Almost 2 years.
Exactly. So this is happening here, not far-fetched. And I know we talk about regulatory issues again, and I want to come back to you, Director. What did it take to be able to facilitate a homegrown solution like the ventilators here to even get that regulatory framework ready to support them and to handhold them through it?
Thank you, Dr. We have committed ourselves as government and ministry together with our state parastatals to ensure that we don't stand on the way of good ideas. I want to give an example of what happened during COVID. instead of even saying the farms have not made it as expected, we reach out to them and even round out the standards. So even in this case, I'm sure it would have taken longer. But there was a deliberate effort as a country to ensure that those devices come to the field and are in use. So what we are trying to do now is we are trying to beat down the even time taken to respond to various regulatory requirements, whether inspecting, giving an okay to an application, and all that. We want our regulatory institutions to work with the entrepreneurs to ensure that rather than them standing on the other side to mark whether they have gotten it right or not, to nurture them to do it right the first time. So this is the emphasis we have put to both our Kenya Bureau of Standards and others to work together with entrepreneurs to ensure that we come up with quality devices and other products right from the one go. So we know there has been a challenge of delayed response to applications, inspections and the like, but the scenario is changing.
And you can keep it. I've been given a new one now. Thank you. Another innovation. Makofi, and because when I talk of triple helix, people sometimes do not understand what it really means, because that's the knowledge creator, and she's talked about the summer camps and the kind of behind the scenes capacity building that has been happening, to the point where university students, not even postgraduate, undergraduate, are able to develop basically a level 4. So we usually go with complexity from level 1 to level 4. A level 4 medical device in 2 years to market approval, and it required more than just the knowledge they created. I think when you started, did you have the standards for ventilators?
No, there were standards in ISO.
Yes.
There were standards in even the British BSI also had standards, but we needed specification from KEBS.
Yes.
But they were quick to develop the specifications, and the specifications now guided. They actually called us to make the specifications more Kenyan friendly and use the standards to inform the specifications, and from that they were able to use those specifications to.
So that's the enabling environment. So again, without government policy to support, this would not have been able to happen. And now the only piece that's remaining is what?
Clinical trial.
Clinical trial, which requires capital.
A lot.
And you need the appropriate capital to do so.
Yes, especially just insurance. Remember, it's a new medical device, so we can't just go arms blending. We have to think about the protocol, insurance, and also every time you do an application, you have to pay more, so capital.
So let me go to the MBA guy here. Buonamani, how do we solve the needs of innovators that have actually been able to move from ideation to prototype to getting the necessary meeting the regulatory standards? How do we now get to a point where we can invest in them? What do we need to do to fill that gap? And I'm coming to you, Dr. Chelule, very soon.
Yeah, I would like to compare innovation like running a relay. It's more of a relay than it's also a marathon in some way because it's long haul, but it's a relay in terms of you're passing on the baton from one person to the other, right? We as Villgro, we are very generous in the way that we wouldn't start you off with equity. We don't want to take shares in something that we are not sure will work, right? To start with. At that stage, when you're trying to validate, prototype, validate, we give you grants because it's a big gamble. This thing might work or might not work. And we don't want to be, when you try to raise further funding, we don't want to be a stumbling block because now we took a lot of shares when you are worth a penny, right? So we would rather work with you, build your value, and contend with you later to give us a good valuation or a good shareholding. So from using now grants to do validation, and then you go through the next steps. As you start now getting towards market entry, we change gears now, and we pass on the baton to private capital, which is return seeking, which can be either debt. If you don't want to give equity, you can still get debt, which means you pay us back, or we become a shareholder. That means we get vested to go now the full haul with you. We call that approach blended finance or mixed finance, where we're trying to give you the full capital stack at each stage, right? The same way that when you're in class 1 to class 5, we don't treat you the same way as you go now to class 8 to high school. As you move, we keep changing the capital stack. The other thing is we understand that money alone is not enough. So we bring around the experts on this panel. Actually, the reason they are here is because they've been involved in one way or another in supporting the innovators we work with. So we know that capital alone is not enough. How do we give you technical assistance, which is customized and very specific to health? If you're doing a biomedical device, we pair you with either Dr. Chelule or Dr. June, and they become your mentor. They're journeying with you. They are helping us also track milestones. Is this company actually hitting the milestones they need to be meeting at that stage? And that will give us a signal to release the next round of funding. I don't know whether that has answered your question.
Yes, actually you have.
Thank you.
So, and I think you've done a very good segue, because as I was coming to Dr. Chelule, the question I was going to ask is, so the way we operate as Villgro, by the way, if you come to our offices, you'll just find our workstations for me and the rest of the staff. We do not have the capacity for the labs. The kind of support Jogo got to build that is not what we provide. We actually partner with partners like Kildi universities, and I know we've worked quite a bit in the past. Dr. Chelule, can you just tell us a little bit of Kildi's, first of all, Kildi's own experience in the medical device space, and the second part of it is what kind of support do you provide? And I want you to speak, especially not just in terms of the infrastructure, the engineering infrastructure, the soft skills, the QMS. We talk of QMS, and that's a do or die. And it's not taught. I don't know any university in the world that has a course for QMS. Is there any? Where do we learn? Because you're the experts, incidentally. So maybe just very quickly, and I'm asking a ton of questions. How do you come into this as Kildi? What's your capability, and how are you able to actually support a medical device and innovator?
Okay. Before I answer your question, I want to give assurance in form of my personal experience, and I want to say this. Any person who does engineering can make a medical device. Jogo can do it. The only difference between medical device and a car like that is that the material we use for medical devices are predetermined. They must be of a certain quality. That's why today, and to design a medical device is far more easier compared to designing a car. True. If the dimension for the engine for this car are wrong, the vehicle will not move. But you've heard that there are people who have bullets launched in their bodies, and they live today for many years. That shows you how simple it is to make a medical device. Number two, my personal experience. I've spent 16 years in the UK working for medical device companies as research and development, later on as a regulator. Two of the companies I work for were started by graduates of technical and vocational education colleges. It's just certificate after high school. At the time I joined, for example, one of them, we were 9 people with PhD. The owner is a graduate of certificate. So don't underrate TVC. They are very good.
Can you please clap? I think this is important. Because we imagine complexity means we cannot do it. These are people who've been there. So that you don't, this is not Karanja's vain imagination. But please continue.
Medical devices are driven by practitioners, doctors and nurses. And I've seen this happen in Kenya. I've come up with a nice idea. It doesn't work like that in medical. It has to find a use. There has to be a user. That user drives. You meet the user's needs through standards, okay? Through QMS. There are companies that operate without QMS, but they have other ways of doing it. For example, I can give you this. There's a time the standard on packaging was not there across the world. So what we used to do, we would package them, somebody runs with it, drop them, you use a car on a rough road, and then we use a plane, and we'd also use tumble dryer, the one for drying clothes. If the packaging can survive through those phases of materials, we deem the packaging good enough to protect the medical device inside. So again, very simple. Let me come to Kirdi. A few years ago, we were given a challenge to make medical beds. And so we were given to partner with Kenyatta National Hospital. They gave us a bed called fixed height. So it means the height is fixed, it doesn't move. And our job was to reverse engineer. So we developed the design, the template, and what we did was we selected certain number of SMEs, that you people, who had engineering knowledge. We trained them. So one would be doing the head, the chassis, the painting, and all those. There were a total of 150 beds. And each of them did their respective parts. At the end of the process, they brought to Kirdi, we assembled them, and we had the beds. So you don't have to be the sole producer of the beds. You just need to divide among yourself and give yourself responsibilities, because the more you do the same things, the better you get. But if you are making the whole bed and then you're worried about the final look, you don't need to. The design will guide you. So at Kirdi, we provide infrastructure. We have machinery in which an SME interested in a technology will come and use them at a fee, guided by our engineers and scientists. What we also do is we guide you to meet the relevant standards required, which will be stipulated by KEBS. At the end of it, when the product is ready, you take it yourself. It's not the responsibility of Kirdi, because Kirdi is not a money-making entity. It's a facilitator. This applies to other sectors beyond medical. So essentially that.
So I'm just, again, people believe the government is not working for us. Is it working or is it not working? Isn't it? So, and I think maybe the last one as we close because of time, and I'll start with you, Bwana Director. For this medical devices cluster to take off, from your angle on the policy making side, what is the number one need, or what is the number one issue that you think we must address straight away in order to actually make those 25 startups? We want to start counting from next year, 2022. How do we, what is the critical thing that we must get right on the policy front? And then what's the most critical thing we must get right in terms of that capacity building, enabling that you're talking about? Wilfred, what's the most critical thing we need to get in terms of financing? And what's the most critical thing we need to get in terms of the creating of this, the invention?
Thank you, Dr. We are determined to demystify industrialization. Our local content policy emphasizes on preferring locally made goods and products. We have also, as a ministry, deliberately taken to forging and strengthening collaboration between academia, researchers, industry, and the policy makers, so that in our decision making, we are in tandem with what is happening in the rest of the world. We want to draw academia to consider the problems that society is grappling with, so that now, as they think even of such solutions, like now the ventilator was sparked, the local production of ventilator was sparked by the need that, we now need a ventilator as one of the life-saving gadgets in the COVID fight. And through that one, we came to even see how exposed we were. We thought, when you hear of ICUs, every hospital and these devices. So that exposed them that we are under that weakness. So proactively now what we are doing is we want to to create an environment where good ideas are progressed from academia, so that academia is not just dwelling on theoretical concepts, but generating ideas that address the society's problems. We then want to create a platform where such ideas find room to create real products in industry. So industry, academia, policymakers collaboration, we are determined to strengthen that one. In the recent past, we have an engagement with the University of Nairobi, Egerton University, Kenyatta University, and today we would have had such institutions here with us, but we indeed shorten the program for the many challenges we had, including the so many activities concurrently running. But we will create a space so that we bring ourselves together and continue with the good ideas that today find room in being supported by our policies. What we used to call strategic industries are now coming real. Self-sufficiency in the essential commodities that we need, whether you call it medical products, devices like those, and we want to actualize this. Our colleagues have put it clear that it is not a vast investment that can deliver, but when you put ideas together, we have our institutional infrastructure that can make things happen. From the policy side, we want to create this energy. We have under a session where the ministry and its sagas agreed on putting our resources together, having a roadmap that supports industry in all its facets, and that is the route we want to go. It enrolls from academia, other institutions, and the industry. We are not waiting for industry to complain. We'll reach out to them to find out even their proposals. We are telling academia to open up for industry even to propose curriculum development that addresses the skills needs for industry in the face of changing times. So we are flexible and we are focused.
Thank you. Makofi tafadhali. I think I'm the only one who appreciates good news here. What's happening? We're too accustomed to bad news. Dr.
Again, I like starting with off remarks. If you go to America, a town called Wausau in Indiana, the top 5 medical device companies are all located there. It's like coming to Nanyukia, and all of them are there. They are competing, so that's a cluster. And I wanted to say, I want to appreciate the Formation of Innovation Forum. This is the way to go. In terms of capacity, as a country, we do actually have capacity. Medical devices are not made necessarily by medical engineers. They are made by doctors, they are made by nurses, they are made by mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. All you need to do when you come together, and we have to go through the experience to appreciate what is it that is required to make a medical device. You just need an engineer to appreciate that this is a device not to be used on the road or outside, but to be used on a human being, and therefore this standard is required. As simple, they are very basic things. They will tell you. For example, I was involved in the total knee replacement for which I got a patent. All I needed to know is, can my knee survive a force of 10 times my weight? As simple as that. As an engineer, I don't even need to know anything else. Because there are times when you will jump, that momentum creates a force that could be up to 2 times or 3 times. As simple as that. So we do have capacity, but we must go through it. And there are some low-hanging fruits. Today, if you go to the hospital with your child, they'll be told they have tonsil, they'll be told to open their mouth, and there's a piece of stick that is put on the mouth to press, that we call tongue depressor. It is a piece of bamboo or a cypress. It's a medical device. We import them. Okay? Things like those.
Where is Njogu?
Now,
Biashara kuja.
Now, before you get injected, you have a piece of cotton which they apply spirit, and this is a piece of cotton harvested and cleaned, sterilized. As simple as that. So these things are easy to make. I think we made it look like complicated unnecessarily. So In short, we have capacity. We will not know what to do until when we walk the journey. And I appreciate Villgro for taking the initiative to invest so that we experience. We will continue building. It will be a travesty of justice if today we started importing N95, face mask, and counts, because I think we have capacity. Yes. We should even have impose some tariffs now on imports of those, because as a country we are well covered.
Very catered.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, Makofi. Yes,
Yeah.
we need money. What do we need to do?
I think a lot has been said already here. As an investor, I look for one critical thing: the team. Before we even talk about money, you have to get the team right, because a good team can fix a bad idea, right? They can iterate, they can get feedback from the market, use those inputs, iterate, build better, right? And that's why, as you said, with the right team, someone like Njogu, maybe 3 years from now, we'll all be queuing with pre-orders to purchase the car, because the team, a good team, is able to go to the market, get feedback, come, iterate, improve. And that's what even Dr. Chelule was saying, that it's not doctors who build devices. If you come to us to this and you're applying for Innovators Forum and you're just a team of doctors, that should be one point of disqualification, right? We want to see a nurse. Where is a nurse? Where is the engineer? Where is a business person? I would like to compare a good team with Githeri. Yeah? The best Githeri is not the one that has only beans or only maize. Yeah? And even the one with beans and maize is not the best, right? If you, the best one would have greens, right? It will have nyama, and if from certain regions it will have waru. Yeah? So we need to see the blend of multidisciplinary skill set. On the same lens, one thing we're also emphasizing as Villgro is gender balance. Again, if you're predominantly male team, we will support you, but that's not the ideal. We've learned the hard way that a team that doesn't also have gender balance doesn't go very far. We will be more than happy if out of the 3 founders, you have different skill sets, and then there's also a female co-founder part of you. I think you'll be checking all the boxes for us. Now, once you get the right team, it's our work to help you now package this in a way that we achieve what is called product market fit. As investors, we're always looking at product market fit. You can have problem solution fit. That means you have a solution to a problem. It works. But when you look at the dynamics of the market, does it measure up in terms of the pricing, in terms of the size of the market? How much are they willing to pay for it? How easy will it be even to maintain SLAs once it's been deployed in the market? All those things come together to achieve a product market fit. So if you have a good team and you're able to achieve a product market fit, you're as good as sold to an investor. And then as we journey, again, we want backers, people to back us, the government, the relevant ministries, the relevant departments. But also, at the very early stage, we will need donors who are patient. People understand that this will be a long journey, that the outcome will not be tomorrow. I don't know how many years you're planning to measure the outcome. Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years?
5 to 10.
5 to 10. So we need those people who are willing to journey with us the long journey, again, to be able to achieve this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our inventors.
I think it's the best to go last, because for curriculum we need to engage industry to inform curriculum. We need to engage, to work as a team, as Dr. Chilule said, not just one-sided, and to think about, okay, if I have the tools, I won't be surprised once I go out there and want to make a knee replacement. If I have the tools which have been into the curriculum to understand what a medical device is, how the human body works, yeah, we can be able to work with, as I said, the ventilator team. That was the first lesson we learned. It's so what? It's just engineers. The Institute of Engineers, electrical engineers in the university came, we want to make a ventilator. We're like, do you know what a ventilator is? no, but we can see it and we can do it. It's very simple. Look, we did a drawing. I was like, okay, who's your user? You need to talk to that person. Who's your... We had to talk to pharmacy people because, and then we had an anesthesiologist as well because they're the ones who use it. We had to make sure that the engineers are mixed, not just electrical engineers. We have to think about mechanical engineers because there's a mechanical aspect to it. So as Chelule said, you're not an island when it comes to medical devices. If you try to do that, you're not going to make something that anyone wants. So including that in the curriculum will be key. The QMS aspect, as you said, who teaches it, we need to include it. I try and include it, but it needs to be all round. And then from there, the connections, as Wilfred said, is a relay. So passing the baton from place to place would be easier if in the beginning the foundation is there. So yeah, I'm excited that there was a good mix in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I will not add any more because that really needs alignment. That's what we're calling the Triple Helix: government, academia, and private sector. And thank you so much, each of you, for really playing a major role in building this vision and speaking to so powerfully on what is we've actually been achieving already without even talking of what we want to achieve, because that's what makes me know for sure we have the track record to deliver. So asanteni sana, we can give everybody a clap, and I hand over back to our MC, Director Kirema.